Hey guys, it's Maymay and welcome to another video. And today's video, we are continuing our video that I did last Monday, which was 7 things I think every card maker should be doing. I asked you guys to keep the conversation going in the comments of that video, and you did just that. There are so many good tips that I want to share with you that are from you guys, from Made It, just like you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little card. I'm going to stitch a card. And I'm going to let you watch me do that process while I share with you all the fantastic tips that your fellow Made It shared. I think this is going to be super fun. So stick around. There'll be tips coming one right after the other. And at the end, you'll see how this card turns out. Let's get started. Our first suggestion comes from Little Kook 6019. They suggest stamping a bunch of images in different colors at once, cutting them out and making a bunch of simple cards using the images stamped. Now, I really like this. They go on to explain a little bit about what their process is, but I really like this because, as they say at the end, it keeps it simple and it's an easy way to use your patterns. Y'all know I like pattern paper and I like to let it do the work, so this is a great one. When you just have some free time, sit down and stamp the same image in a lot of colors and then dig through your stash to find the papers to go with it, and easy card. Our next comment is from, I'm going to shorten this name to Chris because that's at the end there. But this one says, putting a logo or identifier signature on the back. All my cards have a small bunny stamped image on the back. I love this idea. I actually have a friend. She's a Made It, and her name is Holly, and she actually signs her name as a holly leaf, and I think that's super cute. Whenever you get something from her, she'll have a little holly berry and leaf drawn on the back. What a cute idea. So like if you have a nickname and you can have an image that goes with it, that's precious. Or you can just write on the back, handmade by. And there's plenty of stamp sets out there, and a sneak peek, there might even be one coming from us soon. So Tana, and I'm afraid to say your last name because I don't want to mess it up, and I might have messed up your first name, and I apologize if I did. But she gives us a great tip. She says, I use my ugly, in quotes, papers to make templates of things like gift card holders, boxes, fancy folds, etc. Now, ugly is in quotes because no paper's ugly, right? But this is a good tip, and I do this too. I like to use the papers that are not my style. Maybe I have some, like I buy a multi-pack of colors and I get like bright orange or lime green or something that's just not a color I'm going to use in my everyday crafting. I love to use that as a template or even a test project to see if something is going to work out. And another thing you can do is when you have 12 by 12 packs and you have 1 or 2 sheets left over from a project, if they're not something that you want to use on its own or you see yourself using somewhere else, don't be afraid to use that as a template or a pattern or something else. Just instead of wasting it, turn it into something useful. This is a great tip and I love it. Judy Iverson says, I've started making multiples and it's so helpful. I store all my cards in a box that fits up to 5 by 7 and have them arranged by sentiment. I also have a card for every month in the year with all the birthdays and anniversaries listed, and I get a month's worth all filled out and ready to go. I love that. I used to know someone who at the beginning of the month would sit down and make out all the cards for the entire month, and they would go ahead and check the first week of the following month to be sure they had it all taken care of. And they would write all of their birthday cards, all of their anniversary cards, anything they needed to send out for the month. They would do it at the first week of the month and get them in the mail. And I thought that was so efficient. And what a cool thing to do here. Even if you don't mail them right away, sit down and get them all filled out and then just put them in stacks with maybe a Post-it note to mail on this day, mail on that day. That's a really good way to do it. I love this tip. Gail says, I keep a calendar posted in my office, which is my card making area. It's only for cards. I have a set of labels that I print up each year and place them on the date that the card is needed for birthday or anniversary. Then I can see ahead of time what is coming. I can indicate on the calendar a dot when I have made that particular card and check mark it when it's mailed. Look how organized Gail is. I wish the rest of my life was as organized as her card making life, but I love this. As long as we keep it, in our forefront, if we see it every day, hopefully it will help us to get more and more cards in the mail to folks this year. I think it's a super cool challenge for yourself to just sit down and make out a list. If nothing else, if it's just too hard to do, maybe challenge yourself to send out 1 card a month. If you do, that's 12 cards this year, and then maybe next year it's 2 cards a month, and just work your way up until you're sending out, almost as many as you make. We certainly will probably always make more cards than we actually mail, But there's also places you can send for ministries and things like that that need cards. So keep that in mind too. But Gail gave us some really good tips about using that calendar. Who Says 061 says, I occasionally ask my friends on Facebook if they would like me to send someone a card from them. I sign their name is thinking of you. That is brilliant. Do you ever run out of people to send cards to? Of course we do. Sometimes we make faster than we can mail. And this is a great thing to do. You know, there's actual services out there that you can pay to send cards to people, but this is really cool to say to your friends, if anybody needs a card sent out, I can do that for you. And what a cool ministry to have, right? I love that. They say they sign their name, meaning they sign the other person is thinking of you. So cute. I would have never thought of that, but I really like it. Dana Rogers 343 has a great idea. She has a binder with all the card instructions and an example card in a page protector so she can always go back and make the card again. I love this idea. I think we might be nervous about saving an actual card sample because we might need to use that card for, whatever we're making the project for. But if nothing else, if you snap a quick picture and just print it out, even if you just print it on like copy paper and with a best draft or something like that, so you're not using all your ink, and then put that into your page protector, that's better than nothing. But I like the idea of keeping a whole card because that way you can always kind of touch and feel the card and see if this is the one you want to use. So great idea, and one that we probably would all want to use. Brenda Haney 7468 says, I check our church bulletin each Sunday and send cards to those mentioned. People love getting cards and personal notes. It's so important to keep that personal connection in this digital age. I couldn't agree more. What a great thing to do. If you attend church or if you attend a group, maybe you have a club of some sort you attend, it's a great idea to look at maybe the updates or the announcements they're making and see if there's not an occasion for a card that you can jump on. In your bulletin, a lot of times there's a whole prayer list where there's a whole group of people that you could send a card to. And many times you already have a church directory. What a great way to be able to send out cards to people and know that people are hearing from you and hearing how much you care about them. I love this idea. Thanks, Brenda. Laura Sherrick 2210 says, dedicate part of a card making session to pick 2 or 3 stamps or dies that you've never used, brand new or older, and use them. Cut a bunch of something in white or colored cardstock. Stamp some card panels with some floral stamps you may have forgotten you had, and maybe color some or heat emboss some, and make a card or two with whatever you cut or stamped, or just put them away for the next time you sit down to make a card. A couple of things I want to unpack here, which I think are really good. Number one, it's a good idea if you have a stamp set you've never used, but you're not ready to part with it. Pull that out and put it somewhere where you're like, the next time I craft, this is the stamp set I'm going to use. Or maybe you have a favorite stamp set that you want to use all the time. Keep it at hand and then mix it with one you haven't used. That's another good thing to do. I really like that idea. And I also love making things to put away for next time. Like, for example, say you have an hour to craft today and you have a brand new stamp set you've never used. So sit down, stamp it if you need to fussy cut it or die cut it or run it through your SVG, whatever you need to do. Make a bunch and save them for later. You'll find that doing a little bit at a time is better than not doing anything at all. And I know a lot of times we think, I can't craft because I need 3 or 4 hours to do what I want to do. Well, if you do prep work before, you can get a project done and not even realize how long it's taking you to do it because you've been doing it a little bit by little bit. Bonnie Stewart has a tip that I think is handy anytime you have a minute in the craft room. Cut out a bunch of sentiment strips and a bunch of basic hello, thank you, happy, etc. Like, die cut them in black and white and keep them ready to just stick down. I love this idea. I also think if you're not a person that uses dies, you could go ahead and cut them from your electronic cutting machines, or you could cut out a bunch of sentiment strips and stamp on them in black and white and be ready for the next time you need a project quick. Great tip, Bonnie. Thank you. IRC 1026 says, one of the things I do to make sure I actually send cards out is add birthdays to my calendar on my phone and put in an alert for 1 week prior to the birthday. That's really smart. Giving you that 1 week cushion gives you enough time to make sure you get it in the mail so that it can even still get to the recipient. But it's a pretty good idea to fill your calendar with birth dates and anniversaries and special occasions, and then give yourself that reminder so you can get those cards out. Great tip. User BZ7 for short, that's what we're going to shorten that one to, says, I always add some of the front cardstock to the inside of the card and or the inside of the envelope. So many demos don't show ideas for what to put on the inside. All that blank space for writing isn't always the best. You know, I'm not one that really decorates the inside of my card. I kind of think we all have kind of that Hallmark mentality where the inside of the card has a simple sentiment and then you just write your name and that's it. But I feel like it's a piece of artwork. And if your art says, I want to decorate every single space, go for it. I love when I see people do the insides of cards. I think it's neat how it coordinates. And I also think it's a cool pop of surprise element for people when they open it. So I say go for it. Decorate every inch of it. And don't forget the front of the envelope either. People love to get that kind of mail because it's pretty and it stands out and it's like the first thing you want to open. So great tip. Kathy Patterson suggests that we cut and fold card bases and fronts ahead of time. I agree. Either cut and fold them ahead of time and make yourself like a stack of them, or use pre-mades. Pre-mades really, really make things go a lot faster. I even like how she said you can cut the fronts ahead of time. If you're a person that likes to do your backgrounds, it's a good idea to go ahead and cut, maybe using your standard cardstock, cut some 4 by 5 1/4 pieces that you can then decorate and put on your pre-made card bases. You can have a card made in minutes in case you're running out the door. Marsha Dreyer gives us a really cool idea. She says a couple of times a year, I bring a box of cards to church and leave them out in the foyer with a sign that says free cards. By the end of the day, my box is mostly empty and I've helped someone bless someone else. Win-win. That is a great idea. Think of the places. Maybe you could leave a box of handmade cards at your school for teachers to use. Again, the church is a great idea. Maybe you have, like my in-laws go to something called the Senior Connection. It would be cool if I gave them cards that they could pass out to their friends so that they could use them, and then everybody's sending out handmade cards. That's a very sweet idea, and I think it's one I'll have to implement. Michaelia9142 says, I scan my cards 4 at a time, store the page in a binder. It's interesting to look back when I need ideas, especially when I have an element like butterfly I want to use and need background ideas. That is very good. I love this idea. If you don't have a scanner, consider making pictures of them and just store them on your phone, or like we talked about in the last video, like a storage website. Even Amazon is doing that now for free photo storage. But what a great way to look back at your own work. It's kind of like creating your very own Pinterest for yourself. I really love this idea. This comes to us from Lisa Stevens 3822. She says, fantastic ideas. I think every card maker should have a card making project manager tray. I have a sectioned tray where I keep my most used card making tools and supplies and my current project papers and embellishments. When I want to make a card, I move the tray to my craft table. When I have to stop for the day, I put everything back in the tray until the next time I can craft. That's a really good idea. I kind of do that with projects. Like if I'm working on a project that's going to take me more than one sit down time to do it, I just make sure I have something to put everything back in and put it away until the next time I can work on it. It's so much better than trying to go back and find all the pieces or all the paper you were working with, to just have it all right there together. I include my stamps. I might even put the ink in there if I'm using a specific ink, and just try to keep everything together. I like the section tray idea because if you don't have a craft room or you don't have some place to organize everything, what a good idea to just sit at the table, craft when you can, put it away when you don't need it. Great tip. AP85 JP87 says, when I cut down 12 by 12 to use for mystery cards, I cut from each side. That eliminates the middle section, which is usually more open and blank. Those pages are created for scrapbooking, and the center of the page is for allowing photographs. This is true. In a live show, it was a live stream we did a long time ago when we first started mystery cards. I showed you how you can cut the page so that the middle is the leftover strip and the sides are not. The reason for that, like stated here, a lot of times the images are around the page for scrapbookers because it is 12 by 12 scrapbooking page. But if you want to cut down and lose the middle, you just pay attention to where you're cutting and make sure you start by cutting that center section out. It does two things. It also gives you the more plain page to use for like sentiments. You can stamp on it and still be able to read what's on the page. And so it's a pretty neat trick. I will try to find the video where we did it, but it's so long ago and I think it was in a live show. I might not be able to, but if we can, we'll link it below. Lori Sutter says, my mom would make up 10 of the same cards, and she would put a sticky note on the front of the cards. When she sent the card to someone, she would note who it was so she would never send that person a duplicate card. She was active at her church with the outreach group and would send birthday, get well, sympathy cards, etc. to parishioners regularly. Thought you might be able to pass this tip on to others. I definitely can, Lori. It's a good tip. I like how she would keep a note so that she wouldn't send the same card to someone. Someone asked that in the last video, how do you know or how do you keep up with doing that? This is a good way to do it. Or if this is not comfortable, if the Post-it note situation is not comfortable for you, think about getting just a spiral bound notebook and just kind of keeping up with, you know, I sent this card to this person, or just make a note of the card I sent, use this stamp set. I don't really think, this is just me, unless you're sending somebody the same, a card, you know, within a week or even 3 weeks of each other, I don't think they're going to notice that they're the same. I mean, maybe if it happened over and over again, but even if you're like us, you're probably not going to make up 50 of one card. You know, 10 cards would be pretty easy to kind of spread out and not really send that one out again. But I do like the idea of keeping up with it. So if this method works, or get yourself a notebook and just kind of go, the card I sent to Aunt Sally was daisies, then you know the next time you send a card to Aunt Sally, shouldn't be daisies, right? So maybe that'll help. Crafty Come Lately says, make backgrounds, make sentiment strips, make black layers for the background strips, and they're easy to put together and even use for last minute occasions. So what's really neat about this for me is sometimes I have like Crafty block. I want to play with my tools and my inks and all that kind of stuff, but I don't really know what I want to make. And sometimes I feel like I don't have anything to make for. But I love to get into my craft room and start to make backgrounds. You can decorate whole pieces of cardstock. You can cut it down and do smaller pieces. And it's also a good place if you're not a good watercolorist, or if you're not good with ink dragging or ink blending. Go ahead and practice and then put those aside for when you need a card. Add some of the sentiments we've talked about in other tips. You know, dig into your die cuts that you've pre-cut, and you can put these cards together no problem for any occasion that you might need them for. So there you go, guys. That was pretty fun, actually. I am kind of surprised. I did not know how much I would enjoy the needlecraft, but Shannon has really been into it. And I saw this little kind of quilt blocky. It's really a snowflake, I think, but I wanted it to look like a quilt block. And that was a lot of fun to do. I hope you enjoyed all the tips that we shared along the way. You guys are just brilliant. There were so many good tips. I wasn't really sure how to put them into a video, so I hoped watching the stitching and watching this card come to life was fun as you learned some new tips for your card making. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I couldn't believe how many of you communicated in the video that I shared, the 7 things I think every crafter should be doing. We'll link that one below too in case you haven't seen it. But continue the conversation, you guys. I love hearing what you guys do in your craft room. Let me know. Keep commenting below this video as well. Don't forget to give me a subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. It's free. Ring the bell so you can get notifications. And if you liked it, give us a thumbs up. We always appreciate those. Thanks so much. And until next time, bye now.